I have questions for the minister and the IMF delegation.
Go ahead.
So it's a list of questions. I think I'll ask them in one. I'm Mustapha Kedao. I'm a journalist in the Gambia. I have a platform called The Republic. Thank you. The Republic. The Republic, yes. So does the central bank Afri-Exim swap agreement of 75 million have any impact on the debt portfolio of the Gambia? And if yes, does the IMF have any concern over this? And also, I mean, how does the IMF see the level of the depreciation of the dalasi and the claim inflation at single digit? Recently also, I mean, this is also a subject of stories we have done. The central bank has issued a number of guarantees, some parastatals and private businesses. Shouldn't this have impact on our national reserve? If it does, what do you think is the status of these guarantees on the IMF computation of our national reserve? And you also have talked about the issue of targets. All targets are met but one. If you would be kindly specific, what's that target that was met? And also
Mustapha, can you give other stance also?
Yes, he's taking notes. So it's I just want just one more. Okay. Just one more. Okay. And also the issue of tough steps that you've talked about, that in respect of fiscal reforms. And governance issues and also accountability issues that you've talked about. It would be nice if you are a bit specific as to what commitments government has made in respect of those. I think that's for IMF. If I could ask the minister, but I can wait until the IMF.
Please give chance for us.
All right, okay.
Okay, others who want to ask, please.
Yes.
Just answer the question. Otherwise, you are all there. Yes.
Okay.
Your answer might even help add some answers.
Exactly.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Let me maybe start from the back. So you asked about the tough steps that the government is taking and also what progress has been made on the governance agenda. So I can assure you, including in the tough steps, the strict expenditure control that the government committed to, apart from stepped up efforts to mobilize resources. As we mentioned, I think the effort has been substantial. We've seen a lot of results already this year, but the government also committed to persist with these reforms and build on the strong results that we've already seen and extend the mobilization even next year and reach even higher levels. In terms of the governance, what we included so far in the program was a commitment to submit the shortlist of anti-corruption commissioners to the National Assembly. This step has been taken. And in terms of next steps, we also agreed with the government that subject to the National Assembly approval of the shortlist, the Anti-Corruption Commission would become fully operational next year. In terms of the depreciation of the dalasi, what we've been discussing is the foreign exchange regime. This is also an area where the CBG has been taking important steps to ensure that the exchange rate is freely floating to enable the exchange rate to function as a shock absorber. Foreign exchange intervention is mainly aimed at building reserves and ensuring that the float is realized. In terms of the inflation, we've also seen important progress. The CBG has been taking a tight monetary stance. We support them in taking this decision. And I think we've seen results in terms of inflation coming down, reaching 7.6% in August. Of course, this remains above the medium-term target of the CBG, but we see them well progressing and reaching this target in our estimation by next year. In terms of financial stability and the swap agreement, this is also something we look at. I mean, I've emphasized fiscal sustainability first because, of course, of the minister's presence. But yes, financial stability is also important to us. and safeguards also to ensure the financial strength of the CBG. So we have discussed this agreement also in that context, and we are reassured by the CBG that they would set steps that this agreement would not endanger the financial stability. So that is something that will be in continuous conversation with us, but it is something that we were reassured would be addressed. Thank you.
I just want to ask the minister for instance. So because the IMF lady was talking about the anti-corruption commission.
The IMF mission chief.
Mission chief, yes. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So she was talking about an anti-corruption commission. We have seen there were a number of current issues that had happened in the Gambia relating to corruption, or relating to public sector corruption, or even probably perception around corruption. And one of them is the importation of the so-called Russian oil into the Gambia. $30 million worth of diesel that was sold, and there was no revenue to the state. And to show, before you wait for an anti-corruption commission, should you not have done something about this? Because, of course, it was clear there were people who failed to do their job. That is why tax was not collected on this. That is why PURA failed to find them, because they operated illegally in the Gambia. This is confirmed by almost every state institution that looked into it. An investigation started. Somebody asked the investigators to stop, and we don't even know who that individual is. Should accountability not start with matters of this nature before you wait for an anti-corruption commission that's going to come probably next year or 2 years after? Secondly, the issue of there's been a disturbing.
Can we agree that will be your last
question? There has been a disturbing trend of government spending public money without parliamentary approval. This has been in a number of cases. For example, the payment you've made to Mama Jabi, one of the on media, it was purported that this was supposed to be a payment made by the president, $1 million. Media service contract, when it was being finalized, started discussion on this subject was in June in 2022-2023. And they waited until the budget was passed, then they came and do it through virement. It seems as if though they knew Parliament will not pass it, they bypassed the Parliament. And secondly, there were also indulge me for a minute.
Mustapha?
There was also a case of the audit. There was also a case of, and you had seen a rising trend in attacks on audit opinion, sort of credibility of National Audit Office, where state institutions keep saying audit is an opinion, which is a given, because a medical opinion is also an opinion. Well, you don't tell your child medical opinion is an opinion, and therefore the malaria is not malaria. And we've seen this. Would the Ministry of Finance take solid steps to address this matter? Because it's coming from politicians. And secondly, we've recently, a third question, we've recently published a story about a government guarantee, so-called joint venture, which assisted and sort of established the president's nephew into a major food importer. Now, let me clarify this, that the president's nephew was part of JV, was part of Win-Win. He is not part of Win-Win as you claim on Kerfado. He was part of Win-Win, and in fact he made it clear to, in a letter he wrote to Mega Bank when he wanted the facility to be transferred from Win-Win to JV. Now, having cleared this, you said also that you thank JV for taking over from Win-Win because this would have exposed the government. Should we not hold you responsible for that? Because you gave a facility to somebody who we knew was part of the people who led to the failure of the Keystone Bank, because the Keystone Bank collapsed because of the toxic debt that were there back in there. And Kebe, who is the majority shareholder in Win-Win, owed 12 million unpaid debt. And in fact, he had to come to Ministry of Finance, to AMRC unit, to get a letter to take it to the mega bank for it to be qualified or considered for that facility? Maybe I stop here. If we have too much.
In fact, I don't even know what to answer. It's so long. No, actually, a lot of clarifications are required for that questions. First of all, it's such a loaded, multiple questions, and I will not shy away from saying it as it is. On the Russian oil saga, it is very incorrect to say that no tax was collected. Russian oil was an oil transaction. All oil transaction taxes related to oil sales are paid at the pump price, and that's what's collected. What you could have said was a missing was the perhaps corporation tax related to it. But these were offshore international traders and were not registered to do business in the ordinary course of business in country. In taxation wise, they call it domicile status. They were not domiciled in the Gambia. You can still do business in the Gambia. If you are not domiciled, tax laws don't apply to you. That's what you determine tax residency status. I hope I'll go back to my tax lectures just to let you know. When you say the fact that a stranger come to country and do business does not make him tax liable. He's only liable to tax if he fulfill the residency and domicile status. And for your information, international traders were not registered in the Gambia, and as such are not resident, are no domicile in the Gambia. The difference on that transaction was that they took the proceeds of the sale of oil in dollars, and they choose to bank that in the local currency, in the local banks here, which is normal. If you do business, as far as you render the service or you provide the goods, it's you, the provider of the good or service, to choose where your payment will be directed to. You can be here if you are a staff, and I can tell you this, is staff of international organizations. They are based in their headquarters, but they opt to receive a portion of their salary in the headquarters and a portion paid in any country of their choice. So where you receive your proceeds of a transaction doesn't determine your tax situation. So that is just the clarification. It's very easy to say, okay, oil transaction of 30 million was consummated as such. It's an economic activity that happened here, but there are laws guiding taxation. It's not the layman interpretation of who is liable to what tax. I hope you should do some tax lecture as a journalist before you ask questions on the subject matter. Make yourself au fait with that topic. Just because an economic activity has happened does not give rise to taxation. That's the question on that. I hope I'm clear. And the CG is here. You can consult your tax experts for further briefing on this. So when the government sat and the parliamentary committee the response was government, and the parliamentary inquiry itself says the allegations alleged were not established. We were reading from the report of the parliamentary inquiry. So what the report and the findings of the committee was, in the process, certain regulatory steps were missed. And these were mainly principally related to transactions relating to the Dalasi domicile receipt of the cash. What happened was, this trader happened to choose to receive the proceeds in dollars, unlike all other traders who would have insisted on being paid in dollars. And at the material time, the challenge was accessibility to dollars. So this is in a nutshell what I can say about the Russian oil. And you can check the tax laws of the Gambia, offer yourself with the tax situation. And I think the CG was also asked by the parliamentary question, and this was the same response. Unless you want to have your perception imposed on a discipline which has its own guiding laws. That is the answer on that. Coming to the, what is it called, KEBE, what win-win transaction. Let me make another point of clarification. I went to debunk what you said. on Kerfatu, because you wrote the story without even having access to the very MOU which formed the basis of the transaction. And in that story, you allege government gave a guarantee without a compensation. The MOU, for your information, has a profit sharing scheme. The partner was supposed to get 70% of the net profit, and 30% of the net profit would have accrued to government as a compensation. So your story was not true, that government Ministry of Finance issued a guarantee without a compensation. Just point of clarification.
I didn't say you issue a guarantee without a compensation.
That was what I read the story.
Yeah, but that's
Go,
not anywhere in
you can
my
read your
story.
I'm just saying as it is.
Yeah, but it's incorrect. It's
Well,
not anywhere in my story that I said you issue a guarantee without a compensation. That's not in my story.
Go back to your story. I read it, and I'm just coming. Okay, then I don't want to sign a criminal. I'm fine. I'm cool with it, because there is no smoking gun here. We are saying it as it is. We are very happy as a government, and even a point of clarification. You allege you contacted me, and I spoke to you on the phone. I said, how did you contact me? You said through WhatsApp and email. I said, no, I don't receive calls from you, particularly from my phone, but this particular time it came in because my phone was with me when I was on travels, and the email I am using was a Yahoo, which is personal. I did ask you, as a journalist, did you write an inquiry to the ministry, which was received by my registry, and log in your question, which you said no? You don't expect a state minister to conduct an interaction with the press on email, which is personal email or WhatsApp. If you have any question, write to our ministry. It will be logged in the registry. Our response will equally be logged in for posterity, and our doors are open. Coming to the issue of how Win-Win was selected. We as a Ministry of Trade, and for clarity purpose, at the material time, I was the trade minister. We went into this transaction simply to do two things. Principally, empower Gambians in the importation of commodity business. We all know from 1965 to date, in the commodity business, we have not got stable Gambian businesses in this sector. That was part of our review as a trade minister. We said, let's look around. And Rahma came up to say, look, I can partner with you and do this. We said, but look, the trade directorate said, we cannot just deal with one farm. Then Win-Win came forward equally. And why we went for two companies, it was a pilot. When you are doing a pilot, you don't advertise. You test it like a sandbox, you analyze it, lessons learned, then you float it out in general, at which time it should be an equal opportunity. Because when you are going into something for the first time, you don't know whether it will succeed or not, you don't go en masse. You go pilot, learn lessons, structure it properly, and open it up. So when those two farms came up, they were referred to the bank. It was a three-step: Ministry of Finance, Mega Bank, and the Ministry of Trade. It was the bank, not the Ministry of Trade, neither the Ministry of Finance, that selected and did a due diligence on the two companies. And they came out to say that Win-Win was the preferred and the most qualified company to conduct this transaction. And for the information of the general public, not a single dollar of government was used. We structured it in a way it will be LC based, that's letter of credit. No single dollar of the government was used. All we said is government will lend its support to this transaction, because the barriers to entry in the trade sector is the wherewithal to or import the minimum critical mass, which was 12,500 metric tons. This is how it happened. And when the bank, Win-Win, as per our inquiry at the time, that was conducted by the Ministry of Trade, did not have the cousin of the president on his shareholder list. And we have no capability as a ministry to go beyond what's in the shareholder register to determine the beneficial owners of a company. So these are the responses I have. If you still require further, my doors are open. Like I told you, I have nothing to hide. Whatever we did in public space, and we did it in the interest of Gambians. This transaction, if it had worked, it would have at the material time brought a bag of rice to $1,000. It would have empowered a Gambian business to be in the importation of commodity business, and we would have replicated it for other sectors. We just started with rice. We were supposed to have done the same thing with cooking oil, potatoes, and onions. And all was geared towards supporting indigenous Gambians to be participating in the economic activity of the country. I think we were very surprised. This was looked upon as arm twisting. I took an oath when I took this job, and I have no reason to do what is untoward. For your information, you should find out about people before you write stories. We are here to serve our country. We are not here to make breadcrumbs. So no dalasi was involved, no money was at risk. All we did is we structured the transaction, and luckily when the transaction failed...
Does a letter of credit require a sovereign guarantee? There was
no letter of credit.
There was a letter of credit. This was an overdraft facility according to your
you
letter.
Call it an overdraft.
When you wrote an addendum yourself,
yes,
this one you signed,
yes,
you said until the repayment of the loan is done. You call it a loan, and you call it also an overdraft facility.
No. Let me explain.
That was given because the bank was supposed to pay. It's the bank that paid, and the government guaranteed. So it was not a letter of credit.
You don't understand international trade. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, but I know what is a letter of credit and what is not.
A letter of credit will lead rise to payment ultimately when the good is delivered. So when we say a loan, we are meaning when the good is delivered, the fiscal settlement of that bill. That's what we were referring to.
The bank was supposed. What do the bank mean by disbursement?
No, the bank. That was
now. When Kebe failed, the 15 million charges among them.
No.
The bank says disbursement.
Can I lie?
No, we need to clarify things. We cannot. No, it's a press conference. You cannot allow the minister to just say anything and just go home like.
No. I'm just
explaining to you. He needs to clarify that.
When you issue an LC, it's a commitment. When the goods are delivered, that's when payment falls due. At that stage, you have to pay. And that stage of payment, it will be unfunded because the goods are not sold yet. That's why we said we call it a loan. But no fiscal money was disbursed.
So why did you say that the Gambia government had a risk exposure, which was solved by JV coming in?
I'm coming
because
in.
You knew.
I'm coming in. Can I land? Gambian banks cannot issue LCs of that magnitude that are not confirmed. No bank in this country can issue an LC for importation of rice of 12,500 metric tons. So you need what they call a confirming bank. And in the process, those at each stage there were charges. It is the accumulation of those charges that accrue to that 15 million and related expenditure of issuing the LC. LC was issued, a trader was identified, the transaction was confirmed. So we have a working LC. All that made the deal not work was the trader's failure to supply. If the trader had supply, and to where we structure this is what I call warehouse financing. We structure this in such a way that the Ministry of Interior through the police would be taking cost security, the mega bank cashier would be on post, and the proprietor would not have access to either the goods or the cash until it is settled and all the terms and expenses related to the transaction are fully paid. That's how we look at the risk profile of the transaction before we went to the trade. So I hope I'm clear enough, and if you have any further question, please.
No, Kebe, you haven't addressed the issue of Kebe.
Kebe?
Because Kebe had...
No, excuse me. The bank did the due diligence. The bank identified. We, as a ministry, did not run a credit check on Kebe. It was the bank that issued the credit. Who runs a credit check on an applicant? It's the bank.
Yeah, but the bank had shown the willingness to not accept it. In fact, one of the people who had presided over this, we spoke to, and they told us it's because the two ministers were involved. That's why we gave agreement. That's why we went ahead with it.
Excuse me.
The first issue is the first issue is this violated the credit risk policy of the bank, because I read it and I saw it. Secondly, when the CBG first deputy governor was asked to review this file, he told them Kebe had bet with AMRC to recover. We should not go ahead with this. He was clear. It's on the record. And yet all those rules were waived,
Excuse-
and Quebec was considered. Win-win was
Let me
considered.
tell you, let me guide you through. It's not the financial standing of the borrower alone that determines whether he's become eligible. It's the structure of the transaction. Quebec was irrelevant here if this transaction had taken place. One, he will not take custody of the goods. Two, he will not have access to the cash. So where is the credit risk? Where is the credit risk? Just because he had defaulted before doesn't make him ineligible to any credit. And by the way, we as a ministry did not partake in the internal discussion at the bank. I think this is not for an IMF briefing. We can take this offline. And I understand, I think as a journalist,
Yeah.
if you want to draw a story on a topic, do some research on it.
You said in the Russian oil, you said there
Yes,
was no,
okay.
there was no
No,
violation,
yeah.
and you said
Yeah.
No, I never said so.
Okay,
Yeah.
but
I never said there was no violation. Yeah, let the GRA answer.
So we
Don't
know that-
put words
we
into
know
my
that
mouth.
when the GRA received the tip-off from the Financial Intelligence Unit. You said you passed a best of judgment on these companies involved, and you levied $8 million on them. I want to ask whether they paid that, and if they pay, can you solve the evidence of them paying that $8 million?
Oh, sure. All those are open. No smoking gun.
Quickly say this. Thank you very much for asking me.
Huh?
Yes.
They tell me go school.
Yeah, that's what Okay, so
just briefly and then about this thing. Can I go ahead now? Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Briefly, I want to talk about the questions a brother asked about the Russian oil, that no tax was collected. I just want to correct that situation. One, that Russian oil, when it came to a bonded warehouse. Like the depots are considered as bonded warehouse, and people that are involved in international business, they can bring goods there, dump it at the depot, and then they will have people that they work with, some people that they work with, they sell this oil. So the duties were all paid because the OMCs, those OMC who buy the oil from the supplier, before the oil, any liter goes out of the depot, are all recorded and duties were paid in everything that goes out. So it is not a question of there is no tax collected out of the oil that came to the depot. The normal practice is that not even the royal from the Russian one, even the other ones that comes there, it is not the suppliers that are responsible for payment of duty. The suppliers make the facility, bring the fuel to a bonded warehouse. What we mean here by bonded warehouse is a warehouse that has a certificate and they are entitled to receive these goods and dump it there without duty. For those that will buy the goods from them, when they are taking out the oil, we refer to them as OMC, Oil Marketing Company. They are wholly and solely responsible the payment of the duty, and at the same time, the same OMPs also pay their income tax. They pay their corporation tax at the end of the year on a quarterly basis. So it is not really correct to say that no money was collected in terms of tax. Tax was collected. It may have some element, because when you have a business of this nature, there's a lot of players. There might be some other players that did not pay what they are supposed to pay. And when that came to our knowledge, what we do, and the Act has given us the power, that is what we call best of judgment. When we realize that there are other people that also play part in the business, we send them best of judgment. Yes, I will answer this question. Some of those companies, we are still following them, but they did not come up to pay their income tax. What we put there is not, because it's self-declaration. All our tax regimes are based on self-declaration. It is not GRA who will ask the business, this is the amount that you are supposed to pay. We only do that as the last means. If we don't have any information from a particular business, then we use what we call best of judgment. That best of judgment is not necessarily the amount that should be paid. The business can dispute that and they do their own filing and a correct amount. But in summary, tax was collected when the fuels were going out of the depot by the OMCs who bought the fuel from the supplier. And the same OMCs are also subject to pay their corporate income tax. And in summary, this is the answer that I have.
The question was, the 8 million that you levied on Ultimate Bid and the other company, because they were not licensed to operate as an OMC in the Gambia. So the OMCs that paid from the depot, those were the registered OMCs who paid.
Yes.
So these two companies that you levied 8 million on them, they were not licensed and they were engaged in petroleum business. So when you levied the 8 million, my question was, do these two companies pay anything?
Yeah, I answered your question. So
They said
I
they
answered
didn't
your, I said they did not pay. Those two companies, you have to understand, they are neither the supplier nor an OMC. Like they are middle. It's a middle company that they established trying to look for customers for the supplier.
But before you do that, you need to be licensed in the Gambia, and they were not licensed, and they were in.
Of course they were. They were licensed at different times. If you do your research, you realize that those companies were later registered in the Gambia. And then what they were doing technically is like a middleman job. They were going around to different OMCs, trying to get a deal for them so that those people can come and buy. So it is through that business that they are doing, that is the tax, because we said that because they are involved in economic activity in the Gambia. So at the end of the day, that best of judgment was based on the fact that they were earning something. Like you, if you are working somewhere, you are earning something. We go after you, you pay something as part of your income tax. If it is a business that is registered and you are working for a company, we take PAYE from you. But if you are independent, I doubt whether if you are an independent journalist, are you paying your tax? I'm asking you, are you paying? So if you are independent, you are earning some money in the work you do. There is an element that you should pay. So that element, excuse me,
the financial intelligence who flagged these two companies operating in the Gambia, and they notified you to say these people are operating in the Gambia, and we are bringing it to your notice.
Yes.
And after you received that notification,
Yes.
you made a best of judgment.
Yes.
That means they were doing something that was not in line with our laws.
No,
our
no, no.
regulations.
No, you get it wrong.
Because the best of judgment would not be passed if they were not found wanted in anything.
No, you are not getting the point correct. I don't want us to argue it in this matter because we've already addressed this. All I am saying that those two companies, they were registered in the Gambia. After we got the intelligence report, we couldn't get access to them. We now send them to the address, best of judgment. And we expect that when they receive that best of judgment, they will come forward and do their payment. In taxation, most of the time is done in areas. It's not upfront. You have to understand that. When you are paying your income tax, you pay 3 months after you do the transaction. You pay 1 year after. So in this case, it's the same. You can register a business today. You don't expect us to come and tell you registered business today, pay your income tax upfront for the year. We allow you to operate for a minimum period of time, and then you come forward and file. It is not our obligation to go out after all the business and say, come and pay. No, we do that as a last resort. What we expect you to do, and what is on the plan, what is existing is all businesses should come forward and pay their taxes without GRA even following you. I agree with your fact that they did not pay, and then we got the information, we send them best of judgment. It's correct. What you are saying is correct, and I'm trying to even help you to say that you are saying the right thing. They did not pay. But that does not necessarily mean the whole issue, there is no tax collection. We have collected every butut on that oil. As far as, excuse me.
The tax was paid by the Gambian OMCs who were registered to operate in the oil sector.
Whether I can?
The oil the tax that was
He
paid.
is clear, they did not pay tax. That's what it is.
I am telling you that this oil transaction is not different from any other transaction of oil that comes into this country. There are big companies out there. They are called the suppliers of the oil to the different countries. Those people, all they do is they bring this